Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of With Love Soleil. I want to talk today about something I put out on Twitter the other day that got a lot of feedback, and I think that a lot of people relate to, and that is not talked about enough on this spiritual awakening, whatever you want to call it, the path of the conscious person. And that is just how much our relationships change as we change. And I think it can actually be one of the more difficult parts of this process because you want to take everybody with you. And because you recognize, while the changing can be difficult, the evolving, the blooming, and the unlearning, it's not an easy process by any means, but it feels so good. It's so spiritually fulfilling in so many ways that you want everybody to feel it. You want everybody to go on the path with you. You want them all to go on their own path to find it for themselves. And the truth of the matter is, people can only move at their own pace. They can only find their journey at the time and place when they're available to that. And so what happens then as you go on your own is that your relationships will change. I put out a tweet that said something along the lines of, as you do your work, you find it sort of increasingly difficult to be around and in relationship with people who don't do their work because you end up at odds with the work that they're avoiding. And it's very true, because I think on some level, we all have this sort of, we're subconsciously hardwired to evolve. We are subconsciously hardwired to master this expression of who we are and who we're here to be, and to unlearn the societal tendencies that have been kind of ingrained in us that don't really align with who we actually are, and unlearn the ways that we exist that aren't true and authentic to our most natural expressions. And that's what happens on this path, right? As you really go down your own journey. It is the journey of self-exploration and remembering and unlearning, right? All of these sort of nuanced ways that we become who we already are, who we really are. And so then while you're on that path, then you become either kind of an inspiration for others. So some will be super inspired by your path. They'll see your changes. They'll, recognize the work that you're doing and maybe then be inspired to kind of create that in their own lives. Others, if we're being honest, if they're just not ready for that, not available to that, you will end up at a place where you feel like you're kind of knocking up against their programming that they're not looking at or willing to be with or confront or reconfigure. And it makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult to evolve and change in relationships. I think anytime, any relationships, that's one of the more difficult aspects of any relationship, is holding space for the other person to grow and develop into someone else even, or someone more, or, someone that they don't quite, know anymore. It's so interesting to me that, saying to someone like you've changed is sort of like, it's sort of like a negative thing. It has a negative connotation to say like you've changed, which to me is the whole point of what we're here to do, is to change and evolve and become more of ourselves. So, to me, the healthiest and highest relationships are the ones that hold space for you to change. It's almost like they kind of come in meeting you in your full spectrum of possibility. A lot of relationships you may find even sort of see your potential, and that's so healthy and helpful because it holds you in the space of what's possible for your own life. But not all relationships do that, right? If we're being honest, especially long-standing relationships or familial relationships, or people that think that they know you as a certain version of you and therefore you should remain that version, or they're always going to kind of relate to you as that version of yourself. And then, you go through all of these processes and you dark nights of the souls and awakenings and all of the whole, conglomeration of the spiritual path. And you come back and you feel like in many ways a different person. And it's like, how do you then show up in a relationship that expects you to be someone you've been when you're in more ways than not even really that person anymore? You hear a lot of us on this path talk about how we've lived many lifetimes in one lifetime. And I certainly can relate to that myself. I say that often. In fact, I have even gone by different names in this lifetime. So it's quite interesting then to come into an old familial or familiar dynamic as someone different. And so, one way to navigate that, of course, is to just have very healthy, open communication. Like, hey, I know you expect me to do it like this, or expect me to be this way, or join you in doing what X, Y, and Z. But I want to just be really clear with you. Like, as I've become more myself, I realized I don't really align with that quite as much anymore. I don't participate in those activities quite as much anymore. I still would love to maintain, a relationship with you, but I want to just give you the whole heads up that it's going to be different now, because I am moving different. I'm doing things differently. What's important to me is different. What I prioritize, what I participate in, it's different. Any relationship that holds a space for you to even be able to say that to me is so golden, because while they might not understand it, they might even feel a certain way about it initially, if they can even hear that and receive that and, be cool with it and see what that means, and let you kind of define and explain that with your actions and how you're doing things differently, like that at least is the starting point. I think communication in this process, and especially in relationships always and in all ways, is so powerful, but particularly when you're trying to hold space for your own growth. Because, they always say on the spiritual path, if you really want to see your growth on your path, go back and spend time with your family, right? That's kind of the common joke of doing this work, because it is family who hold the most sometimes outdated, but also quite specific versions of you in their head. So they're going to relate to you as, baby sister or small child person, or, whatever version of you that they maybe love the most or kind of got stuck on or felt the closest to. And so here you are, like very much grown adult, showing up in a much different version, and you're kind of combating their programming of you being this outdated version of yourself. So it takes time. It takes a lot of patience. And so going back to what I was talking about in that tweet, there will be people who you can say that kind of like create the space for your growth in the relationship. You can communicate that, and whether they totally understand it or not, they're going to be on board with it and down and ready to see what happens. There will be others who kind of mock it or laugh at it or make fun of it, but maybe they can kind of allow for it a little bit. And there will be some you couldn't even say that to, right? Because they just don't have the language for that, or they're not available to it, or you feel sort of energetically or spiritually like it would cause kind of a rift or whatever, and those are the relationships that you're going to really have to revise and look at as you evolve, because energetic incompatibility will become such a prominent thing in your relationships. In fact, energetic compatibility will probably be one of the number one priorities that people have to be able to vibrate at your fullness and your frequency in order to kind of really be around them and spend sort of, substantial amounts of time around people, because, otherwise you'll find yourself kind of crouching yourself down or making yourself smaller to be around people who need you to be smaller so that they can feel like themselves. That's unfortunately how the dynamic will go for some who maybe aren't doing their work, right? It's almost like because you're in so full and you're so completely yourself and your authenticity is just shining bright, that some will find that as, it's almost like an attack, because on a subconscious level, they too are hardwired to do the work. And so you in your fullness as someone who maybe has done all this work and is showing up in a much more true and much more empowered version is going to kind of be a mirror to the work that they're not doing. And again, even that, right? Everybody's going to even relate to that differently. Some will see that and be inspired by it. Like, wow, I see their growth. I recognize how far they've come. Like to them, that'll be like, I need to get on my game. For others, it'll just be like, they'll throw hate at you or have to kind of chop you down, or, it'll be less pleasant. And it's each their own, right? Every relationship will relate to your growth differently. Every person in your life will, adjust accordingly. And some, unfortunately, will vibrate out. And that's just how that's going to go, and I think family, again, is one of the real tests of this, because it is true that we come in with our familial relationships, and there is so much richness in those relationships, in the healing of them or the clearing of them, or whatever, whatever we're here to do within those bonds. There's a reason why that's our family. There's a reason why those folks are written in. And so that's, one of the highest tests. So then the question is, well, what if it's family, right? What if it's someone you're just simply not aligning with anymore, and they're, a parent or a sibling or whatever? And my advice around that, and what has been the true for my journey, is I've let them do what they need to do. At times I've been like, what, this person is cut off. I'm done with them. I don't care who they are in my life. I'm never talking to them again. I made that decision in my heart. And then, within time I'm talking to them again or whatever it is. But it's almost like at certain points, the bond needs to end in the way that it has been, because it has to start again with you in the way that you are. And that's really, really important, no matter who it is. And you might have to go through that very uncomfortable, like, we're done here, break up type energy with whoever it is, even if it's a family member, because they too have to realize, like, you simply are not available to the relationship as it has been. So that relationship is ending. And then maybe there's a little gap, a little space, a little pause, a little time to be mad at each other or work things out on your own sides of things, if possible. And then potentially there is, they're always family, right? They're still your sister, whether you're talking to them or not. It's still your mom, whether you're talking to her or not. It's your, they're still the ties, and the relationship exists whether it's active or not. So it's up to you as you grow, maybe then, and for me, it has been the case, as I've had to do this in a couple of my familiar relationships, that I felt like I could clear and restabilize myself as this newer version of myself, and re-enter into a relationship with them as a newer, more empowered, and more clear, more communicative version of myself. And I did that, right? So I ended as it was, I hit my pause, I did my work, and then I circled back to say, I gave my apology or whatever I felt was appropriate to kind of clear tension or negativity in the bond. And then, got kind of really clear about what I was asking for going forward. And it so far has worked for me. I had to do that a couple of times with a few of my really close relationships to kind of readjust, and what's been take the pause and start again. And for me, that's what has worked. I don't know that would work for every single person. It may not even be possible for every single person or every single relationship. But what I'm trying to say is that sometimes you have to interrupt the relationship in a way that's a little bit more than like, hey, I'm going to be different now. Sometimes that's not going to be enough, that people aren't quite available to that, or it's, again, rubbing up against their not doing the work. And so you have to then take a little bit of a firmer stance, whatever that's going to look like for you, or even just lessen how much you're available to them, or how much you contact them, or how often you respond to them, or whatever it is, right? You're just adjusting your seat in the relationship so that you can maintain your newness, your being empowered, your totality, and the person that you are, and that you are continually becoming, and in every dynamic. Right? Like, that is the ultimate test. I think it's quite easy to be your full, most empowered version when you're by yourself or with the people that get it and you can talk to, normally, and you just feel like you can be your full self. The challenge then, and the work then, is, can you maintain that fullest self no matter who's around, no matter where you are, no matter what's happening, no matter what you're doing? Can you still be that really full volume of yourself? And that's the next level of the work, right? We kind of do the inner work, and it's sort of often in solitude and done kind of, tapped out of life as you know it. And then you have to plug that person back into the real world. And then you have to really kind of take on the work in real time and showing up as a new version. So, when it comes to relationships and what I was talking about in that tweet, there will be people friends or whomever, maybe family members, that you simply can't get on the same page with energetically, that it just doesn't align with, and that doesn't mean you even love them any less. You don't have to certainly hold negativity towards them, because that's only something you hold within yourself. Obviously, there's no benefit to that. So we always want to heal and repair our bonds to the extent that we feel at peace with them. But that doesn't mean that they have to be an active part of your life. It doesn't mean that you have to talk to them every day, or you have to maintain the same regimen that you have had in the bond thus far. Give yourself permission to change within your relationships just as much as you do in your heart and in your mind, as like this new, empowered, strengthened, spiritually satisfied, driven, determined, focused version of you. So let people vibrate out, and also though, don't be one, and I'll call myself out on this, to just cut things off, because it's easier to cut it off than it is to like do the work to figure out how to rebalance. Because to me, it's almost more satisfying to rebalance and to like get through that awkward communication phase of like, I'm different now. I know it's weird to you and you might not understand it. And I can't just sit down and like write out the ways that I'm different or what to expect for this new me. But I'm going to show you, and I'm going to really ask you to honor that, and it's not an easy conversation to have. It's certainly not an easy conversation for other people to receive, because it's almost like, who, everybody's going to respond to it different. Who do you think you are? It could be a very common response. And again, it's because not everybody even has the language to think, what do you mean you're different, right? We're all kind of the same. Well, for some of us, we are actually quite different people from who we were at 10 and 15 and 25 and 35 and 40, whatever, wherever you are on the age spectrum. We're actually quite literally different people. I always think when someone knew me at like even 20, I kind of, do the math in my head of like what version they knew me at, because if they knew me now, it wouldn't be the same person that they would have known then. And again, not everyone is on that same kind of fast track of growth. Everyone's doing their own thing. They're all on their own path, and it's not right or wrong. But it is that they're not going to often always be able to keep up with you. It is that they're not going to even understand what you're saying or be able to relate to it in any way. And it is that energetically, it will exhaust you to be around certain people who can't really meet you at your sort of fullness, or that you feel like you have to collapse around to kind of make them comfortable. And again, all of that work can be done in real time. The conversations can be had in real time, you being present with the energies that aren't like kind of allowing for your totality and the discomfort that exists there. And even, just opening, making room for yourself, as uncomfortable as it can be. It's not always comfortable to just be like radiant and full and bright and loud energetically. And yet, if that's who you are, if that's your truest version, especially after you've put in the work to get there, which is not easy work by any means, then the last thing you want to do or need to do is collapse yourself down to make anybody else comfortable. That shouldn't even be an option. And again, you find ways to exist and coexist with people. And it's not that you have to take up all the space and, bulldoze everyone, but it is that you know how to maintain and create and then maintain the space for you, so that you still feel like your full self and you're not, watering yourself down or quieting yourself down because certain people are around. And that you recognize that you are important and you are necessary in your fullness, that you're actually doing yourself and others a disservice by quieting and watering and collapsing, and that your fullness is the medicine, whether they like the medicine and it feels good and they're inspired by it and they're like studying you and trying to figure out how to do it too, or they're like wanting to throw little jabs at you or whatever it is. Everybody's going to respond to the medicine differently, just as everybody responds to all medicines differently. There's not right or wrong. Some are inspired, some are mad about it, and there's it's wherever they're at. It's totally their own projection of what they're available to. So you maintain that. You do everyone a favor by maintaining your fullness, by maintaining who you are now, even if it's different than who you've been. You give yourself that room to exist as you fully are, and the right relationships will stay. Some won't even be able to stay in your experience and in your atmosphere because it's just going to be too much. And it is what it is. You love people no differently, whether they're sitting next to you or you can't even be in a relationship with them anymore, at least for now, because there's this disconnect. Whatever the dynamic is doesn't mean that the bond is gone, or it never existed, or it didn't matter, right? All relationships are valuable, whether they lasted for a day because you had sat next to them on a train ride and you had an amazing conversation, or the relationships that will walk you through the end of time. They're all valuable in their own right. And I think that releasing our attachment to how they look and how long they last and what they need to be valuable helps a lot in recognizing like everyone has something to teach you. The ones that cause you difficulty in being your full self are some of the best teachers, because they're the ones that are going to show you how to maintain who you really are, no matter who's there. And that is the key. I think that is such a key in self-mastery, because then that trains you to really maintain your vibration, really maintain that sovereign frequency, be unbothered by others' opinions of it, because it really, as you start to see, has very little to do with you. It has so much to do with where they are on their own path. And then you just maintain your truth, right? The whole work is to be someone who exists in a new way, as a new being in a new paradigm. That's what we are building here. That's what this work is all about. So we don't even have the full language for it, but we know how it feels, and we can exist in it, and we can inspire the rest of the world in whatever direction they want to be inspired or not by it. But you will know, as you leave that space, as you leave that experience, I was my fullest self. I came as me. And so no matter what happened, you'll still feel that really deep spiritual satisfaction of recognizing that you held your truth. You held your vibe, and you held your authentic expression. And that's all you can do, right? The leaders of the new paradigm, the leaders of this new way of doing things, are just living it out. We don't even know how this is going to look yet. We're just recognizing that there's an absolute need now for things to be different, for people to relate to themselves differently. That change starts on an individual level. So we are the ones who've said, okay, cool, we're gonna take on that mission to change ourselves. And therefore we're each contributing individually to a higher timeline and a better reality for all, however that's going to play out in whatever a new world could look like. So if you're on this path, kudos to you, because obviously it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of willingness and dedication. You don't get the applause as much. Not everyone can even understand. Some people think you're weird for changing. Like there's kind of a lot of and constant adversity on this path. And yet it almost makes it sweeter, because you know that you feel so much better as in being who you are and releasing all of the ways that you're not, that it's like those opinions don't even touch you anymore. You are on some level quite untouchable as you do this work. And especially as you do it when on the days it's just you, that nobody can clap for you. Nobody knows what you just blasted through energetically, or the things you just cleared or healed from your timeline. Like only you really know what you've gone through and what you've overcome and what you have accomplished. So you have to be able to stand in that and let your standing in that and the vibration of that new version of you speak for itself. My name is Soleil. I am so honored to be in this space with all of you. Please always feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know how you're feeling. Let me know what comes up for you as you watch these videos. And if there's more that you want me to dive into, or more you want to talk about, or questions that you have, I am here for all of us, right? We're all in this together. And it's really sincerely an honor for me to be in this space with all of you. Thanks, everyone.